the day I decided to break up with Joel. A heavy rainstorm poured down. I had just finished my surgery. He held an umbrella and walked beside me, his steps brisk and impatient. He walked so fast he didn't even look back at me once, letting me get drenched in the rain. My high heel got stuck in a drainage grate, and I struggled in the downpour. He merely lifted his wrist toward me through the curtain of rain, tapping the face of his watch, and those Italian custom-made leather shoes of his stayed planted a few steps away from me. Distant, unmoving. Suddenly, I felt exhausted. 3 years of dating, and he had never once slowed down for me. I was always the one chasing after his back. And just a few days ago, I saw with my own eyes how he deliberately slowed his steps when walking with his first love. There was no excessive intimacy between them, yet something about them was tender, natural, familiar. Maybe in these 3 years, I had never been the one he favored. Joel didn't know this. Running after someone is truly tiring. So this time, I chose to let go. Chapter 1. Late autumn wind brushed past me, and the insulated food container in my arms had grown cold. I stood frozen in place, unable to move even half a step. In front of me, Joel was walking side by side with a girl along the small path beside the inpatient ward. He glanced sideways slightly, and even with a fitted white coat on, he couldn't hide the attention he drew from people around him. I had seen that girl before. In Joel's photo album, she was his first love, Elena. Back then, he had explained casually, we dated in college. She went abroad for grad school, so we broke up. His tone had been flat, emotionless, as if the past meant nothing. But now, walking beside her, his eyes shimmered with unmistakable feeling. There was no inappropriate physical closeness between them, but the warmth, the familiarity, the tenderness was impossible to ignore. I didn't know when Elena returned to the country, and I didn't want to know what she had said that made his smile never fade. I only noticed one thing. Joel slowed his steps to match hers. Joel was tall, and his natural pace was fast. Whenever I walked with him, he would stride ahead alone. He didn't hold my hand. He never waited for me. Yet now, he was watching Elena's face flush slightly from being out of breath, and he adjusted his pace to a gentle rhythm that matched hers. He was waiting for her. A fine, subtle ache spread across my chest. Over the past 3 years, I had asked him more than once to slow down for me. He had always been indifferent, never caring about my feelings, never considering my thoughts. He would pinch the bridge of his nose and sigh impatiently. Nicole, can you stop being unreasonable? Just because I walk fast, that means I don't love you? If you insist on thinking like this, there's nothing I can do. Every argument ended the same way, him blaming me for overthinking, and the matter brushed aside, and I had believed his dismissive explanations. I had lied to myself for 3 whole years. Now, every step he slowed for Elena felt like a slap across my face. Perhaps, in our 3-year relationship, I had never been the one he cherished. As they talked, Elena raised her hand and touched the watch on Joel's wrist, laughing softly. After all these years, you still kept it. The silver watch gleamed coldly. Joel never let me touch that watch, except when we were kissing in bed and caught up in the moment. Only then would he carefully remove it and place it on the nightstand. Any other time, it never left his wrist. But now, he allowed Elena to run her fingers across the scratches on its inner band. I took a deep breath and lifted my head, fighting back the tears. Joel finally noticed me from the corner of his eye. His expression froze. He frowned slightly when he saw the insulated container in my arms. Nicole, what are you doing here? Chapter 2. Inside the office. Only Joel and I were present. Elena had already been sent away by him, an instinctive act of protection toward her. The window was open, and a cross breeze swept through. After crying, my eyes stung sharply when touched by the wind. After a brief silence, he turned around and exhaled softly. I'm colleagues with Elena now. Don't overthink it. I didn't say anything. The borscht you wanted is here. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. A flicker of confusion crossed Joel's face. I wanted it? Didn't you specifically ask for it last night? Last night, out of nowhere, he asked me if I could make borscht. I didn't understand why, but I still looked up recipes and learned to make it seriously. Joel seemed to finally remember and frowned. Elena wanted it. She asked me if I knew where to get good borscht. I just asked casually. He turned his back to me, casually picking up a work log on the desk, flipping through it as if I weren't even there. His tone was careless. From now on, unless it's necessary, don't come to the hospital so often. A tight, suffocating pressure squeezed my chest, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, I didn't want to pretend anymore. You don't want me here, so I don't interfere with you and Elena rekindling things, right? Like today? Nicole. Joel's brows froze, and the hand flipping the pages stopped midair. What kind of nonsense are you talking about now? His expression turned cold. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Think whatever you want. Elena and I have nothing to hide. He had always been composed, rarely losing control, yet now, because of Elena, he'd lost his balance. In the tense silence, Elena pushed open the door with a stack of documents in her arms. Joel, tomorrow's surgery. She noticed the tears brimming in my eyes and feigned apologetic confusion. Did I interrupt something? The moment Elena entered, Joel's expression softened noticeably. No, you didn't. She was just about to leave. I let out a short laugh and turned to walk out. Behind me, their voices rose in the office. Your girlfriend brought you food? Joel didn't answer, silently allowing Elena to open the insulated container. Borscht? Elena raised an eyebrow. A glint of smug delight flashed in her eyes. Perfect timing. I haven't eaten either. You don't mind if I join you, right? Joel didn't respond. He simply walked to the door, gave me one deep look, and closed it. Chapter 3. I went home alone. When I arrived, night had fallen completely, and the spacious apartment was so quiet a pin drop could be heard. I stood by the window, and suddenly my phone rang. It was the birthday message my mother had recorded for me in advance. Nicole, today is your 27th birthday. Mom wishes you a happy birthday. If I'm counting correctly, you and Joel have been together for 3 years now. Are you two married? Are you happy? Mom won't be around anymore, so remember, you must always love yourself. My mother's warm voice echoed through the empty house. I pressed the button to stop the playback, and my nose grew sore. Joel and I had met through a blind date. At the time, my mother was in the late stages of cancer, regretting that she might never see me start a family. I didn't have the heart for romance. I just wanted to make Mom happy, to play along. When I first met Joel, his aloof and self-possessed demeanor convinced me that both of us were being forced into this farce. But to my surprise, after the meeting, Joel began courting me passionately. He learned that my mother was sick and introduced me to good doctors, helped me understand confusing test results, and taught me how to massage her to ease her pain. Those long nights distorted by the smell of disinfectant slowly became bearable with his company. In my mother's final moments, he confessed his feelings to me, promising to treat me well for a lifetime. I cried and nodded, and through my tear-blurred vision, I missed the calm, almost emotionless look in his eyes, as if he were completing a task. Not long after we started dating, he suddenly began staying out at night and became colder and colder. That was when I learned about Elena, because Elena, who was far across the ocean, had started contacting him again. That night he couldn't sleep. He leaned against the balcony railing, the ember at his fingertips glowing and dimming. Then he posted a social media update visible only to Elena. I act tough, but I never said I didn't want to wait for you. Chapter 4. Joel returned home only in the latter half of the night, carrying the damp chill of the outdoors. The bedroom door was half open. I kept my eyes slightly closed, pretending to be asleep. He didn't remember my birthday. While pulling off his tie and tossing it carelessly on the floor, he held his phone and spoke to a friend. Think about it, back then you and Elena were clearly in love, yet you insisted on breaking up. Now look, she's back, but you're about to get married. Her coming back this time is obviously because of you. What are you planning to do? He leaned against the sofa, the side of his face outlined coldly by the dim light. After a long silence, he finally spoke slowly. I don't want to trap her too early in the cage of marriage. She's a bird meant to fly. She should see the world before choosing where to land. As for Nicole, my breath caught. She's very dutiful. My parents have been hoping I'd start a family early, so I obliged them. Went on blind dates, and found the obedient daughter-in-law they wanted. I'm already engaged to her. The rest of my life is nothing more than marrying her and having children. This act, I'll keep performing it. His voice was extremely calm, devoid of any emotion. Something inside me snapped cleanly. In the past, I would replay countless small details, trying to find proof that he loved me, even if he never remembered my birthday, even if he never waited for me while walking, even if he rarely cared about my feelings. I would still think of his steady shoulder during the hardest times, the warmth of his thumb brushing my tears, the messy kisses the night we got engaged, always making excuses, always finding reasons for him. But now, after all the overwhelming affection had faded, I finally had to admit, for him, so-called love was merely a reluctant performance. He had never truly loved me. In this relationship, he remained composed, advancing and retreating with ease, and I kept running away, covering my ears, pretending I was happy. Chapter 5. That night, I developed a fever and slept poorly. When I woke in the morning, the space beside me was already empty. Joel was at the entryway fastening his tie, expression indifferent. The engagement ring he had removed lay discarded in a corner, glinting coldly. I suddenly remembered that he hadn't worn it for days. In the past, he would still wear the ring and coax me when I was upset. But ever since Elena returned, the ring on his finger had disappeared, leaving only a fading mark. Love or the lack of it, far too obvious. Joel glanced back and saw me standing dazed on the stairs. As if on impulse, he walked over and gently touched my hair. For a second, there was a flicker of something like affection. But the moment a message popped up on his phone, he withdrew, expression returning to coldness. It was a message from Elena. I'm going to work. Only when the sound of his car engine rumbled through the courtyard did I snap out of it. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. For 3 years, the same act, pretending intimacy before he left home, repeated day after day. Yet I had never felt true sweetness. It felt more like soothing a cooperative partner. These 3 years, Joel hadn't treated me badly. After our engagement, he handed me all his bank cards, letting me use them at will. He handled all the household chores without complaint. Whenever I mentioned wanting something, he agreed readily. Everything seemed perfect. But something was wrong. Too courteous, too polite. So polite it was devoid of any real affection, just obligation. Between him and Elena, there existed a past I could never participate in. An unbridgeable chasm. If he didn't love me, why hold on? Perhaps letting go would be easier than holding on. Chapter 6. Autumn rain fell endlessly, carrying a bleak chill. From the moment I arrived at work that morning, a dull ache had been pulsing in my lower abdomen. By now, standing beside the printer, I could barely straighten my back. Just before losing consciousness, I dialed Joel's number. But several consecutive calls went unanswered. It wasn't until a colleague called 120 for me and supported me onto the ambulance that my phone finally chimed. It was a message from Joel, having a meeting, short and concise as always, sparing every word. No concern, no inquiry, nothing. He probably really was busy. At the hospital, ceiling lights flashed past the corner of my vision. Sweat soaked into the blue fabric beneath my back. I opened my eyes weakly. With only a glance, I recognized Joel. He was speaking softly to Elena, patiently explaining a surgical case. Completely absorbed, they stood very close. Elena leaned affectionately against his chest. So this was the meeting. As the stretcher wheels rolled, nearly bumping into Elena, Joel instinctively reached out, lightly pulling her into his arms, holding her fully. Only when the hem of his white coat brushed against my dangling hand did he subconsciously turn around. Shock flashed in his eyes. His Adam's apple moved. I let out a faint, ironic smile, closed my eyes, and refused to look again. When I woke again, I was already in a ward. Joel, wearing his white coat, tall and composed, stood at the foot of the bed with his back to me. Sensing I'd woken, he approached and pinched the bridge of his nose. His first words were scolding. How could you let it get to appendicitis without telling me? Perhaps seeing my pale face, his tone softened slightly. Do you know how dangerous it is? It can be fatal. I didn't look at him, just stared silently at the ceiling. You were having a meeting with Elena. The room fell silent for a brief second. Joel stiffened slightly, then shoved his hands into his pockets, expression darkening. I'm not on the same path as Elena anymore. Nothing will happen between us. Displeasure and impatience seeped through his brows. Nicole, constantly acting unreasonable like this is really tiring. Chapter 7. For several days in a row, Joel never showed up. A few days later, during rounds, it was Elena who came to examine me. She held a clipboard of medical records, the rose gold watch on her wrist chiming with a crisp metallic sound. It was the same couple's model Joel wore. You're recovering well. You'll be able to discharge soon. She lowered her gaze to record the data, the pen scratching rhythmically across the paper. Joel drank too much at the gathering last night. I was the one who took him home. Such a shame. This morning's emergency meeting was also because I reminded him. My fingers, which had been searching for moving company contacts, paused. I looked up at her quietly. Being with Joel must be very blissful, right? She snapped the clipboard shut with a crisp sound. A subtle, proud smile curved on her lips. When we were together, he was so clingy and so caring. Back then, if I casually mentioned wanting some trendy cake, he'd wait in line all night to get it. If I had even the slightest fever or headache, he worried endlessly, practically dragging me to the hospital. Even when he drove, he had to hold my hand. Isn't it ridiculous? It was ridiculous. Joel had given Elena all the tenderness he possessed. He worried about her taking the subway. He nagged her for skipping meals. If he saw a beautiful view, he thought of taking her there. But for me, there was only endless indifference and perfunctory responses. Elena stood up, smiling down at me with open arrogance and triumph. Once a man gives all his love away, he won't love again. That's how love works. First come, first served. Nicole, you'll just have to accept that. Chapter 8. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, it started raining, and Joel was the one who came to pick me up. His car was parked in the outdoor lot. He stood under the eaves holding an umbrella, waiting for me. When I walked closer, he reached out, trying to take the bag from my hand, but I avoided him. For a brief second, his expression froze. His thin lips pressed into a straight line. His Adam's apple moved several times before he finally spoke. A few days ago, the Provincial Bureau suddenly reassigned an expert team. I wasn't at the hospital. The umbrella suddenly tilted, and the curtain of rain cast a shadow over his eyes. I replied with a faint pulling my coat tighter around me. I didn't ask about the night he got drunk or the fact that Elena was the one who took him home. At this point, he didn't want to talk about it, and I no longer had the desire to ask. Seeing me stay silent, the veins on the back of Joel's hand bulged as he gripped the umbrella handle. Do you really have to make a scene now? I ignored him, too tired to respond. Let's go. Joel walked as fast as he always did, rushing ahead without caring how hard it was for me to keep up behind him. I gradually fell behind. Rain quickly soaked through my clothes, coldness seeping into my bones. Joel still didn't notice my struggle. His steps only grew faster and faster. Suddenly, I remembered the scene of him walking with Elena that day. How he had deliberately slowed his pace for her, step by step, each one falling hard on my heart. My high heel got caught in the drainage grate, and a dull pain shot through my ankle. I bent down, struggling to get free, but when I looked up, Joel was already dozens of meters away, standing by the car, fixing his sleeve. When he raised his head, he glanced at his watch through the rain and said, "Hurry up. I have surgery this afternoon." And those Italian handmade leather shoes of his stayed rooted firmly to the ground, several steps away from me. Something inside me fractured with a quiet crack, shattering beyond repair. He would never wait for me. He wouldn't even turn around to look. My eyes had embraced his back countless times over the years, and each time, after feeling that familiar loneliness, I had run to catch up. But this time, I didn't follow. I stood where I was and simply looked at him. I watched Joel's expression shift from calm indifference to puzzled frown to the impatience I knew too well. Joel, let's stop here. Let's break up. Chapter 9. I once heard a saying, when you're unsure whether you should continue a relationship, look into each other's eyes, because eyes don't lie. And in the brief moment when Joel and I looked at each other, his eyes were like a still, lifeless lake, no ripples, no warmth. But when he looked at Elena, I clearly saw shimmering light, deep affection. That kind of love is impossible to hide. So when he left me standing there once again, staring at me in confusion, I truly had no desire to take another step forward in this relationship. But this time, Joel finally turned back to look for me. His footsteps were urgent. When he stood in front of me, his shadow blocked out all the light that remained. Nicole, what do you mean by that? What are you throwing a tantrum about again? I drove through a storm all night just to pick you up from the hospital. I still have back-to-back meetings this afternoon. I'm exhausted. Maybe because I rarely argued with him. My words genuinely angered him. What tantrum am I throwing? I raised my sleeve, soaked through by the rain. Joel, in the 3 years we've been together, have you ever truly loved me? You never remember the things I like. I hate cilantro, but every meal we shared was covered in it, just because Elena liked it. You never remember my birthday. For 3 years, I celebrated every birthday alone, and you didn't even send a single message. But for Elena's birthday every year, you always sent greetings right at midnight, and you never cared about my feelings. When we walked together, you never waited for me. I was always stumbling behind you. Even today, right after my surgery, and in the pouring rain, you still didn't turn back once. Through the rain, the calm and distant expression he always wore finally cracked. Holding the umbrella, he remained silent for a long time. Joel, you clearly love Elena, so why insist on marrying me? What then? Were you planning to marry someone you don't love, only to spend the rest of your life mourning the one you really do? Let me tell you, Joel, it's honestly disgusting. Who would willingly become a stand-in for your grief over your ex? Joel stared at me, stunned, as if he never expected such words from me. The umbrella tilted slightly, and it seemed, for the first time, his inner balance was finally tipping in my favor. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Nicole, you're just angry right now. I won't take anything you said today to heart. I'll wait for you to calm down. Chapter 10. That night, I didn't go home. When my best friend Helen found me, I was eating at a roadside spicy hot pot stall. Joel would never accompany me to places like this. He said he had a cleanliness obsession and thought these places were dirty. So during the 3 years we were together, I almost never ate anything like this. Not until Elena showed off in front of me, bragging about how Joel peeled crawfish for her and took her to eat every street snack around the university town when they were dating. Only then did I realize there was never such a thing as a cleanliness obsession. His exceptions, his indulgence, his tenderness, he simply never gave any of it to me. Helen sat across from me, staring in shock and confusion. You broke up with Joel? You really thought this through? I didn't blame her reaction. After all, when Joel first entered my world, staying with me as I took care of my mother, I was both grateful to him and deeply in love. Back then, I was drowning in the fear of losing the person closest to me. I desperately wanted someone to hold on to. So later, even a tiny drop of affection leaking from his fingers was enough to capture my entire heart. I sipped my soda, looked at Helen, and said seriously, yes, I broke up with him. Nicole, do you really not love him anymore? You won't regret this? I nodded solemnly. Once upon a time, I loved him very much. The dazzling impression when we first met, and the companionship he gave me during my darkest time. Those memories supported me through years of lonely persistence. I tried my best, but with Elena around, I could never enter his world. I could never see through his heart. Even at our closest moments, when he held me, his dark eyes showed more compromise than affection, more loneliness than love. Because of that, I kept hurting myself. I began comparing myself to Elena in secret. Began competing in a battle I could never win. And in the end, all I got was a version of myself covered in wounds. So I let go. Joel is a cold person. He's incapable of really loving someone. Nicole, you suffered a lot being with him. Helen raised her soda can and bumped it lightly against mine. Let us celebrate my beautiful Nicole, who has finally ended her 3-year-long emotional entanglement. From today, from this moment, she has completely, utterly let him go. Her eyes sparkled. I smiled and clinked my cup against hers. The bubbles burst softly in my mouth. Suddenly, I felt relieved. Life is too short to cling to things that were never mine. A toast to the past I won't return to, and a toast to the freedom of tomorrow. Chapter 11. On the way back, rain suddenly began to fall without warning. With a soft ding, my phone lit up. It was a message from Joel. "It's 10 at night. When are you coming home?" Joel still believed I was just throwing a tantrum, as if my breakup earlier today didn't count at all. After all, in his mind, he had never done anything wrong. It was just a bit of carelessness, a lack of daily concern. It was just a bit of work-related contact with his first love. It was just me losing my temper. Once I cooled down, everything would go back to normal. He never took my grievances seriously. In his eyes, I was simply making trouble for no reason. I didn't respond. I swiped his message away. A few minutes later, he called. I didn't answer, so he called again every few minutes. Suddenly, I felt like laughing. Joel was always calm and composed. Things about me rarely stirred any ripple in his heart. But now, he had actually called me nearly 10 times in a row. When the last call came in, I finally picked up. The very first thing he said was, "Where are you?" There was a hint of urgency in his tone, as if he were genuinely worried. When I didn't reply immediately, he seemed to realize something and returned to his usual accusatory tone. "Nicole, are you drunk again? If you get yourself wasted this time, I'm not coming to pick you up." When I first found out about Elena, we had a huge fight. In anger, I broke up with him and went to a bar to drink. But I was still too young then, and too unwilling to let go. In the end, I shamelessly called Joel and asked him to pick me up. I still remember clearly when he arrived. He looked calm and indifferent, but there were dark circles under his eyes. I hadn't gone home, and he hadn't been able to sleep. Waiting until midnight, I drunkenly collapsed against him, cried, and called his name. Through the cold wind, a very soft whisper drifted to my ears. "I'm sorry." Cold wind filled my lungs. I exhaled deeply and spoke into the phone. "Joel, I already broke up with you today. I'm not coming back. In a couple of days, the moving company will pick up my things." There was a long silence on the other end. "Nicole, are you serious?" "Of course, I'm very serious." I hung up, blocked his number, pulled my scarf tighter around me, and disappeared into the wind and snow. Chapter 12. I rented a new apartment, 1 bedroom and 1 living room. It wasn't as luxurious as Joel's large flat, but it was enough for me to live alone. After the breakup, my time suddenly became abundant. Before, I always had to spend my evenings learning different baking recipes to please his mother. But now, I finally had time to do the things I love, or to meet friends. Joel's mother was a traditional and conservative housewife. The reason she accepted me into the family was because she saw how carefully I cared for my own mother during her illness. She thought I was obedient, easy to manage. During our first meeting, her words all implied that after marriage, I should return to the family and devote myself to being a good wife and mother. So every weekend, I had to wake up early and accompany Joel on a 2-hour drive to visit his parents in the suburbs. Listening to his traditional and conservative parents giving me lecture after lecture. Listening to her criticize Elena for being unreliable, always flying around the world and never settling down. In truth, I didn't like it at all, but because of Joel, I never resisted. Fortunately, now I was free. Free physically, free mentally. No one could decide whether I stayed home after work or went out with friends, and no one could tug at my emotions and make me sad. This Sunday, for the first time, I slept in. I didn't wake until 10 in the morning. Then the moving company called. "Nicole, Joel said you have to come in person, otherwise, he won't open the door and let us in." On the other end of the line, Joel's cold voice cut in. "Nicole, even if you're moving out, you should at least come and pack your things yourself. Otherwise, I'm not letting strangers into my home." When I arrived at Joel's place, he was leaning against the door, in a standoff with the movers. When he saw me, his gaze lingered on me for a few seconds. Then he shook his head slightly and mocked. "Nicole, what did I ever do to you in these 3 years, that you blocked me so quickly? Now, to find you, I even have to rely on someone else to reach you?" Even after 3 years under the same roof, Joel was still arrogant. He was cold and distant, like a passerby sharing a home. Even now, he still refused to lower that high head of his. "If you're only going to say these things, Joel, Then we really have no need to talk. I walked past him and entered the house, signaling the movers to come in. Joel pressed his lips together and didn't speak again, but his eyes never left me. He watched me directing the movers, pointing where to put things, what to pack. Several times, he looked like he wanted to speak, but stopped, his expression twisting. The clothes in the wardrobe went from colorful to nothing but black, white, and gray. The pots and pans I had bought for the kitchen disappeared one by one from the counters. When I started dismantling the photo wall, Joel finally couldn't take it anymore. He stepped in front of me, blocking my way, his height casting a pressure over me. "Nicole, what are you doing? There are photos of me in those. I don't agree to you taking them." Most of the photos were taken on important days. In every picture, I was smiling brightly, unconsciously leaning toward Joel. And Joel, in most pictures, only showed a cold profile, slightly resistant. In these 3 years, I couldn't count how many cold looks I had swallowed. Thinking about all those painful days, I felt the shadow of fear rising again. I didn't want to see them ever again. Joel was right. He was in the photos too. I shouldn't take them. So, in front of him, I tore off the half with me on it, one picture after another, falling to the floor in fragments. I only took myself with me. Joel froze. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his voice tight. "Nicole." His eyes were turning red. I pulled my wrist out with force and gave him a cold, ironic smile. "Joel, you never cherished our days together, so why bother being angry over these photos now?" When I finished packing, the floor was a mess of debris. Joel frowned deeply, looking awful, but it didn't matter. I had already taken everything valuable. The gold jewelry and jade bracelets he bought for me, I didn't leave a single one behind. I had already traded my best years for my deepest lesson. Between money and love, I needed at least one. Before leaving, I placed the house key gently on the table. Along with it, I left our engagement ring. Chapter 13. After the unpleasant moving day incident, Joel never came looking for me again. News of our breakup and canceled engagement quickly spread through our circle of friends. Everyone who heard about it felt regretful. After all, Joel and I had been together for 3 years, already engaged, just one step away from getting married. But Elena posted a moment on the very first day after our breakup. "What belongs to me, you could never steal." When a mutual friend showed it to me, I only found it laughable. My friend, however, was anxious. "You wasted 3 years of your youth for nothing. All your effort went down the drain. Aren't you afraid you'll regret it someday?" I shook my head. During my 3 years with Joel, I was constantly draining myself emotionally. It felt as if I were on a sinking boat, barely staying afloat. But when the boat is already going under, it's better to get off early. You can still cut your losses. I finally got away from awful people and awful situations. You should be happy for me, not worried. After all, no one should carry trash around forever. That's what I told my friend. He laughed awkwardly. Later, I learned that he had been sent by Joel to persuade me. Every word I said reached Joel, untouched and unrevised. That day, the paper in Joel's hand was crushed tightly into a ball. But soon after, he looked out the window with absolute certainty. "No, she'll come back. She can't live alone. Without me, she won't last." Chapter 14. Unfortunately for Joel, he was wrong. Back when Joel and I first got together, a big part of the reason was that I couldn't bear the loneliness of living alone. I had depended on my mother my entire life. She was my only support. When she suddenly passed away, I lost all emotional grounding. I stayed in that quiet home for a long time. I would turn on the TV just to fill the room with sound. A house for one person is too quiet, so quiet that loneliness becomes deafening. I panicked and clutched at anyone who came near me, including Joel. Maybe when someone is lonely for too long, they easily slip into what they think is love. I hoped love could fill that emotional void, hoped I could find comfort and support in him. But in reality, the loneliness I felt while being with Joel was even greater than when I had been alone. Because disappointment in that relationship came far more often than warmth. Now, I started reevaluating what it meant to live alone. I began to acknowledge my own importance, to accept that loneliness is a fundamental part of life that no one can erase. without marriage trapping me, without the role of someone else's daughter-in-law. My life blossomed with possibilities. I quit my old clerical job, using a long-forgotten professional certificate. I found a new position in a company that matched my field. Being new, I had to learn everything from the beginning, pouring all my energy into it. Meetings, overtime, business trips, non-stop. Yet I didn't feel tired, because after the hard work came visible bonuses, and another kind of spiritual satisfaction. Half a month later, Joel found out that I left his family's company. That day, just as I returned home from work, he was sitting at my door waiting for me. I had worked overtime until 10. He had been waiting a long time. Winter was approaching. He wore only a camel-colored cashmere coat, looking thin and fragile under the dim light. When he saw me, he stood up immediately, staggering as he grabbed my arm. "Why did you resign?" He glanced at my small, humble apartment and frowned. "Is the salary not enough for you to live on? I can ask my father to double it. It has nothing to do with that." I unlocked the door, blocking him when he tried to follow me inside. "Joel, we already broke up. This place isn't convenient for receiving you." Joel let out a cold laugh. "So you hate me that much? You'd rather hide in this tiny little place, cooking for yourself, than come back with me? This place might not be worse than your home." I looked at him with irony. In his home, I not only had to endure Joel's cold treatment, but also sacrifice everything for his family according to his mother's demands. Joel was proud and intelligent. He understood what I meant. His face turned dark, and he said nothing more before leaving. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. It was from Elena. In the photo, Joel was slumped drunkenly across the leather backseat of a car. Light from above cast shadows along his sharp features. The top buttons of his shirt undone. There were smudges of lipstick on the corner of his lips. "Not sure why he's so sad today, but it's fine. Tonight, we're going zero distance, extra thin." I let out a soft laugh. "Thank you for taking in the trash I no longer want. And with how openly you're cheating, aren't you afraid your boyfriend overseas might find out?" Chapter 15. Elena called almost instantly, her voice raised sharply. "Nicole, what do you think you're doing right now?" Elena was panicking. A visible smile curled on my lips as I opened the files my best friend Helen had sent me on the computer. On the left, Elena kissing her married 40-plus advisor by the river cam. On the right, her recently published academic paper, with data so perfect it was obviously fabricated. I suppose Joel would never imagine, I said slowly, that the glamorous, flawless Elena was a mistress abroad and a mistress at home. Elena's entire resume was truly spectacular. In college, she dated Joel, and luxury gifts never stopped coming her way. But at graduation, she abandoned him without hesitation for her future prospects. Overseas, she began dating her advisor, a man over 40, with a wife and children. She endured the scandal, persisted for the academic resources he provided, and her PhD path was impossibly smooth. But no matter how thrilling a twisted affair is, being an old man's mistress for too long gets exhausting. So she pulled strings and returned to China, parachuting directly into a top-tier hospital, the very same hospital where Joel works. Then she started her endless entanglement with him all over again. "You think Joel will care?" she snapped, her voice suddenly shrill. 6 years ago, I was the one who dumped him. I paused deliberately. "Do you think," I said softly, "he'll find being abandoned worse, or being deceived worse?" Elena, sweetheart, since you love collecting trash so much, I'll let you have it. But if you ever dare disturb my life again, I can't guarantee these photos won't show up in your hospital's group email. Chapter 16. After that warning, Elena never tried provoking me again. Maybe she was scared. Maybe she was guilty. Either way, I didn't bother thinking about it. After contributing significant results at work, the company valued me more and started bringing me into important projects. Late one night, after a round of endless toasts at a business dinner, I walked with a senior colleague to help send the last client into his car. When everything settled, the night wind left only me standing there, holding a bouquet of fresh, vibrant red roses. I rubbed my sore ankle and turned to head home. A familiar Audi R8 approached from a distance and stopped right in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing the refined, aristocratic side profile of a man, Joel. His gaze locked directly onto the roses in my hand. He stared for a long moment before speaking, his voice coated with ice. "Who gave you those?" I smiled. "It has nothing to do with you." Joel's eyes darkened, turning heavy and unreadable. "Nicole, is this why you refuse to come back? Don't you think you owe me an explanation? We've only been broken up for a month." I was irritated and amused at the same time. "Are you insane? Not everyone is like you, entangling with your ex while still being in a relationship." Joel's expression darkened. He unbuckled his seatbelt, stepped out, and grabbed my wrist. His brows furrowed tightly. "Nicole, I never crossed any lines with Elena. After we broke up, nothing happened between us. I never cheated. I always considered you my fiancé." I let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Never crossed any lines? Joel, do you think I'm stupid? Those intimate moments in the hospital were nothing? 2 drunken nights spent with Elena mean nothing? During the 3 years we were together, you gave me no care, no warmth, only cold professionalism. And now you pretend you always treated me like your fiancé? Isn't that ridiculous?" Joel stiffened, his eyes dimming. At last, he softened his tone. "Elena means nothing to me now. I haven't liked her for a long time, and there's no lingering attachment. But whatever the truth is, I hurt you. I can't deny that. For that, I'm sorry." His expression darkened. It was the first time he had ever sincerely apologized to me. And the man who once stood so tall now bowed his head, looking utterly defeated. "As for what you said about my lack of care, your birthday, your preferences, I didn't remember. That was my fault. Not waiting for you when walking, also my fault. But Nicole, back then I didn't know how to love someone. I disappointed you. Now I know. Now I understand how to love you. Nicole, come back, okay? That home can't exist without you. We lived together for 3 years. How can you just walk away?" He held my shoulders, looking up at me with reddened eyes. It was the first time I ever saw Joel cry. Such a proud man, reduced to such a defeated expression. Even the buttons on his shirt were mismatched. For Joel, that was a monumental mistake. How ironic. When I was chasing him, giving him everything, he watched coldly from afar. But now that I've left, he regrets it. Too late. I pushed him away forcefully. "Joel, I worked so hard to move forward. I'm not going back." Chapter 17. After that, I didn't see Joel for quite some time. I only heard from acquaintances that he had been quite depressed lately. He often showed up at work reeking of alcohol. After work, no one could convince him to go out. He just stayed home alone, suffocating in silence. "Nicole, ever since you two broke up, Joel hasn't been able to move on. He still has deep feelings for you. He really cares about you." I found it laughable. People with a clear conscience always move on quickly after a breakup. Only those who owed something in the relationship. Only they sink deeper and deeper into regret, unable to let go. That isn't affection. That's just the behavior of a scumbag. As for this so-called caring they spoke of, maybe it existed only in Joel's empty words. If he truly cared, how could he ignore my lowest moments and let my grievances drown me? If he truly cared, how could he walk ahead with long strides while I had to jog behind him? If he truly cared, how could he never once notice whether I was tired, whether my shoes were hurting, whether I could keep up? But before Joel had time to stay depressed for long, Elena's mistress scandal finally exploded. That day, Elena's affair with her advisor overseas and her ambiguous involvement with Joel back home made the trending searches. In just 2 hours, the entire internet was in an uproar. Being one man's mistress today and climbing into another man's bed tomorrow, does she just love being the other woman? Trash man, trash woman. If she's a mistress, of course she has no shame. She's used to hearing nasty things. That male doctor is gross too, completely blind. In an instant, Elena and Joel were dragged into a public storm. After the chaos, the advisor who cheated on his wife had his teaching license revoked and was let go. Elena was investigated by her school, had her degree revoked, her internship terminated, and was expelled from the hospital. Joel, smeared by public opinion, had no choice but to resign. After the dust settled, Helen came running to me. Nicole, was the whole thing online you're doing? So satisfying. I shook my head. Nicole, you're still too soft-hearted. She huffed. These two are disgusting, especially Elena, seducing men and provoking you to your face. Why leave them any escape route? I smiled lightly. I didn't lead the online mob, but I did send Elena and her advisor's photos to his wife. She has the right to know the truth. Gentleness is my foundation, but sharpness is my stance. I knew from the beginning that my power alone wasn't enough to stir any major waves. After all, I had been a simple clerk in Joel's family company for 3 years. Without connections, any article I posted might have been suppressed instantly. But the advisor's wife was different. Her family background was powerful. She herself was a respected academic with strong connections, and when faced with her husband's betrayal, she would never be merciful. Chapter 18. Half a year later, thanks to outstanding performance, I was promoted to manager and was about to be transferred to another city. On the day I was leaving, the sky was perfectly clear. Joel, whom I hadn't seen for months, suddenly appeared at my door. After half a year, he looked much more worn down. What are you doing here? His gaze dropped to the suitcase in my hand, a bitter smile spreading across his face. I heard you were leaving. I came to see you off. He reached for my suitcase, trying to take it from me. I politely stepped back. I can handle it myself. Disappointment flashed clearly across his face. He stepped to my side again, walking next to me, just like a long time ago. Only this time, he finally remembered to slow down, as if deliberately matching my pace. But now, I sped up on purpose, moving ahead of him, leaving him standing there stunned. I turned back and waved at him. That's far enough. Goodbye. I no longer cling to being loved. I no longer rely on someone else to ease my loneliness. I no longer fear losing anyone, and I certainly no longer care whether he waits for me. I don't need a man to slow his steps for me, because I will walk faster, move forward on my own, and go meet my own mountains.